basically until the Rings of Power comes out, and probably after the Rings of Power comes out. Because I see shit takes on the internet, and they make me mad, and I feel like I have something to say. Maybe nobody will give a shit. Maybe everyone will give a shit. Probably no one will give a shit, but I don't fucking care. What's up, Ghost? So we're gonna react to what could is definitely not the worst opinion I have ever heard of the new Lord of the Rings Rings of Power shit, but it's inherently so bad because basically everything that he complains about in the show is either lore okay or is actually lore accurate. Which is like, and he mostly begins his argument off with like the shittiest way you can begin any fucking argument. And we'll get to that when we get to that. Here we go. Here we go, everybody. Here is the Critical Drinker's horrible opinion on the sad tale of the Rings of Power.
You know, sometimes when you fuck something up, and on reflection, it's clear that it was generally just a bad idea to begin with, but you're too proud and too committed to give up on it, so you keep forging doggedly ahead, determined to silence your own doubts and somehow make a go of things. But then everything you do somehow makes it worse. Every decision sees you lurching from one failure to another, until eventually you wish you just never bothered in the first place. Well, that's pretty much how Amazon must be feeling about Rings of Power right around now. The doubts were there right from the beginning.
No, they weren't. No, they weren't. Like, I'm in multiple Lord of the Rings community across multiple social media platforms, and I've read several articles. And at first, the worst, the worst thing that people were saying was that they were scared. People were scared. People were very cautious. There was excitement because hey, we're gonna see the second age. We're gonna see the first and second age. People were concerned like, how far are we gonna go back? No, this person really likes the original Lord of the Rings. Like they really like the original trilogy of movies, and they claim in the video I reviewed yesterday that they also like the books. I don't really know anything beyond that about them, but they definitely like the original three movies, which is a pretty cult take. Most people do. I would say over 95% of the people who have seen the original Lord of the Rings movies like the Lord of the Rings movies. So that's to be expected. Um, but yeah, no, the community was not scared. They were little. I would say at worst we were cautious, and I was one of those cautious people as well because I wasn't sure that Amazon was going to give the uh the due diligence and the love that was going to be needed to do something about the second age of the Lord. Still not 100% convinced, but I'm more optimistic than I ever have been.
When it was first announced that a multi-billion-dollar mega corporation responsible for destroying more small businesses than the fucking Great Depression decided to buy up the rights to one of the most beloved and highly regarded fantasy novels in the entire history of literature. Well, at least the rights to the unfinished appendices of that story. Longtime fans, wary after seeing so many other once popular franchises bent over a table and subverted to such an extent that they needed reconstructive surgery and lifelong therapy sessions,
Besides Star
For
Wars,
the glory of the Imperium.
thank you for the resub. Thank you for joining the Cadian Shock Troopers. Um, besides the Rings of Power and Star Wars, I really don't know what he's talking about because that's just like two. And there are some people who like the sequel trilogy. I didn't like the sequel trilogy to Star Wars, but also we had like Rogue One, which was like a super fantastic film. So I don't know what all he's talking about, but I know some people do feel this way.
the news with the kind of enthusiasm that George R.R. Martin has for finishing Winds of Winter.
I forgot about that line. That hurts.
Then came the first batch of images, the first casting announcements, and the first paid for puff piece articles from the hollowed out shells of humanity masquerading as journalists. And all they really did was reinforce what everybody already suspected. This wasn't going to be a faithful retelling of a beloved story because
So that's my first real issue with this video And I wanted to make this video a month ago because it made me so mad watching it. I haven't been this mad at a video in a very long time. People were not angry about any of the fucking casting. Like all the popular Lord of the Rings YouTubers didn't give a crap because most of the people that they cast, uh, oh, it's saying that this is a rerun. Oh, I didn't realize that was there. Uh, so yeah, the casting for Lord of the Rings of Power, they're mostly people who are very minorly known. They're not very big names. Like the biggest name I know of is the guy who played Benjen Stark in the Game of Thrones series, and the guy who played young Eddard Stark in again the Game of Thrones in one episode. The rest of these people are some of them are very popular British actors in theater and in like minor films, but none of them are household names across the United States. And again, community as a whole was cautious, not really afraid, not really scared of anything.
Because the
So it's like
story in
fuck.
question didn't fucking exist. Because all they really had was the rights to the unfinished appendices for the Silmarillion. And it
And also, I'm going to say this flat out: if you're looking for a faithful retelling of a movie of the story of the Lord of the Rings, as far as going directly from the book to the films, there have been 3 Hobbit films, 3 Lord of the Rings live action films, and 4 animated Hobbit and Lord of the Rings films. None of them are a faithful retelling. They they fucking they changed tons of shit. Like, and some of them are because they needed to speed up time and they needed to save face. But some of them, like the changing of the character of Aragon, were just done because they thought it would be boring to watch on screen, and it would have been. It would have been really boring to watch one of the major characters go through very minor to basically not at all character development from the beginning of the films to the end of the films. And they wanted Aragon to have character development, and it worked, and it was good, but it's not fucking faithful. And I guarantee you, this guy fucking loves the character of Aragon in the movie.
definitely wasn't going to be an accurate representation of the world created by Tolkien, because that world is old fashioned and problematic and doesn't.
And there are some old and fashioned problematic elements to uh Tolkien's old things. There's some accidental racism. I don't think Tolkien is a racist. I think he had a lot of racial biases, and given the society that he lived in, he wouldn't have had the ability to check them like we would now in 2022.
Properly reflect the world we live in today. I mean, it's called fantasy for a reason, but that's okay. I'm sure the self-professed Tolkien scholars out there would be quick to point out how Tolkien himself was practically a blue-haired, anarcho-communist, feminist, progressive culture warrior behind closed doors.
Wait,
Sheer
because
fucking hubris.
Honestly, it makes me laugh that people unironically refer to themselves as Tolkien scholars. Seriously, guys, it's a fucking book. Have you not got something better to devote your entire intellectual lives to? Jesus.
okay, there's a lot of things to unpack there. First of all, yes, it is weird that we devote so much time to a made up fantasy world. That is true. It's fucking weird. But a lot of people put a lot of time into a lot of weird shit. So I'll give him that. It's a little bit weird that people like myself put so much time in. I wouldn't consider myself a Tolkien scholar because there are people who are far more knowledgeable than me. Tolkien, who I would consider the scholars, more people like Stephen Colbert and bigger things. And but the bigger issue with this is the bigger reason that this is a shit opinion and why this made me the most mad I've ever been in a video as far as like a television media thing is this guy is just saying, I don't care what the experts say. They don't mean anything. This is like an anti vax level opinion. This is like, oh, that person over there has spent more time studying and knowing and being a part of everything. And I'm not going to listen to them because they're dumb. Woo!
Jesus, the terrifying thing is that one day we're gonna have fucking Harry Potter scholars
We
endlessly
already have
debating the
those.
hidden meaning behind
It's
J.K.
already
Rowling's
happening.
obsessive use of adverbs in place of actual descriptive writing. Seriously, once you notice it, you can never unsee it. Anyway, I digress. A teaser trailer was as inevitable as a new Star Wars show getting announced roughly every 10 minutes, and this is when things went from bad to thermonuclear.
Now, he actually does make a point there. The very first trailer for this fucking show sucked ass. The CGI was terrible. It didn't really tell you anything, and it was fucking horrendous.
My personal highlight of that first trailer was watching Galadriel climbing the wall from Game of
Ooh. This next sequence, I want everyone to prepare yourself. Prepare your butts for what you're about to see. Because this is a rough take. This is about to be rough.
Thrones in full battle armor, using a fucking dagger as an ice axe. Honestly, all that was missing was the Tampax logo.
For the glory of the Imperium.
Thanks for the subscription. Thanks for joining the Katie and Shock Troopers. Yeah. Do I even need to unpack why this is terrible? Like why this is like an out of touch shitty joke? Do I really need to unpack like everything that's going on in this fucking image I just paused on? Like oh, here, I'll back it up. I'll back it up for a second. It's actually worth a rewatch.
My personal highlight of that first trailer was watching Galadriel climbing the wall from Game of Thrones in full battle armor, using a fucking dagger as an ice axe. Honestly, all that was missing was the Tampax logo and some generically empowering statement like, "Feel the moment," or "Make your own rules." The end result was that
Woo! Man, I'm not gonna say anything. That's just rough
the
as
first
fuck.
teaser got hammered worse than me at my local on a
It
buy
did.
one get one
It
free
really
night,
did.
and from then on it was pretty much full-scale war, with the might of Amazon and the mainstream media on one side, and the entire Lord of the Rings fanbase on the other.
Incorrect.
Things went from bad to worse when the studio
Okay. I also have to say, like, she's a popular fantasy. Like, I want to back it up here, like, because he makes fun of these people.
just the kind of normal, everyday people that totally represent the Lord of the Rings fandom.
Yes. Notice how he says that while focusing on the black people. Notice how he says that while focusing on the black people. Like, the Lord of the Rings is a Western world phenomenon, and I bet you it's spanned past the Western world. I would give you I would say that. And I actually know her. I used to follow her. I don't really follow her anymore just because I kind of got bored of her content. But she is a popular fantasy and Harry Potter TikToker and like really big name in the fantasy community. Like a bunch of people who follow like Lord of the Rings style content know her. Also, he only shows these 4 people in all of the things. There was like 12 fucking people that went there, including at least 2 white people I know of. There's a person who's of Indian descent who went, and there's a black guy called Know Ya Better, who was on TikTok as well. And that guy, Know Ya Better, he knows more about the Silmarillion than fucking anybody else. I fucking know that man knows so much about the Silmarillion. It's absolutely insane. He would make me feel like an ignorant little child if we got into like a debate on the Silmarillion stuff because of how incredibly knowledgeable.
them to attend a big PR event in London and totally didn't bribe them to give their totally unscripted, unrehearsed, and honest opinion of the.
So again, he's just dismissing people that are saying he's just dismissing everyone who's saying that it's good as saying that they're paid. Now, they could have been paid. I don't fucking know. He is never going to present to us a receipt that these people obviously were paid. And yeah, your judgment might be a little skewed if you get to go to a big thing presented by the company and they're going to try to present their thing as best they can. That's how marketing goes. But that would also mean you'd have to distrust every single critic that ever went to a premiere ever, or anybody who ever got a first viewing of anything. So obviously, people who go to promotional events, people who go to anything are just being paid. And I could say the same thing for you, Mr. Man, who's making this video on YouTube. You're being paid because you probably have an audience that caters to this content that you're making, and you're making a video in order to make money. The man has over 1 million subscribers. This is probably his job. So you're being paid, literally, to say this.
The first episodes. Yep, you could practically feel the authenticity radiating from the screen. The second teaser trailer made it extremely clear that if there was one thing we could look forward to in this show, it was diversity.
That is a Harfoot. He's gonna complain about diversity, and I'm gonna go on and hit the nail on the head of all the forced diversity arguments that he makes. This has been confirmed as a Harfoot, which is described in Tolkien's writings, in Tolkien's own words, as bronze of skin. Granted, this may be a little dark for what you consider to be bronze skin, but the point is that Tolkien said his world was racially diverse. There's actually a group of people who are described as dark skinned who they are not present in the films, but in the books actually are the ones that guide the Rohirrim over the mountains through a special mountain pass that the Rohirrim could not have gotten through without their help in order to get to the Palantir Field. So the whole reason Minas Tirith was not conquered by Sauron in the story was because of somebody who looks like this. Granted, they didn't do the fighting because they were scared of running away from Sauron, and frankly, who could blame them? So yeah. The first wrong note, sir.
Diversity.
So he's not pointing at her. Obviously, he's pointing at this person. And Tolkien, and most people will say that Tolkien's elves are white. There actually is no description of Tolkien's elves specifically all being white. We do know that all the elves in Tolkien's world that we know of, their name, people like Galadriel, Elrond, Arwen, etc., that they're all described as fair skin, and all elves are described as fair, but not fair skin. Not necessarily. Also, if you're gonna harp on being authentic and being faithful retelling, you'd have to remove this problem right here. This gentleman has a problem with his ear. Yeah, little known fact. Tolkien never describes elves as having pointy ears, and he actually hated the fact that people thought his elves had pointy ears because he thought it was stupid.
Diversity.
Okay, that's fucking Galadriel. This is hilarious that he uses this as his argument. He's using a character. Now, granted, she wasn't in the original telling of the Legendarium, but in Tolkien's later life, he made her a very significantly more important character. She's also a huge, massive character in the Lord of the Rings, at least in the Fellowship. And her story is incredible. Like, sorry, her inclusion is incredible. Her importance is actually very big and important. And she's going to be a major character in this story. She's been on every advertisement, and I'll tell you why Galadriel is going to be a bigger character. Because out of all the people that translate from the Lord of the Rings films back into the Second Age, there are fucking two. There are fucking two. Elrond and Galadriel. That's it. Oh, and Sauron. Uh Sauron, the main bad guy. I don't know why the main bad guy was words that were escaping me this time. But literally, so like if you're gonna market somebody, you're gonna market the most memorable character of the films, which to me, I would choose Galadriel over Elrond. I would choose the beautiful elven maiden over the kind of old grumpy guy. Like, I love Elrond to death. He's a very cool and interesting character, but if you're gonna market Galadriel. It just makes more sense.
And more diversity. Damn.
I don't even know what that was. That was just a female hobbit. And like we see tons of female hobbits. I don't even know what is going on there.
Man, I've never rooted for a comet so much in my life. But hey, like taking out a third mortgage to refuel your car these days, filling out your tax returns, or burying that corpse that's slowly stinking up your house, there was only so long that Amazon could put off the release of a full-scale trailer. And here it is at last in all its, glory. So does it allay everyone's fears, silence the critics, and reward the dozen or so people that have still got faith in this show? If I had to sum this trailer up, I'd say that it reminds me of that old saying about politicians being the kind of people that can talk for hours without actually saying anything. There's a lot of big lavish landscape shots showcasing what thousands of CGI artists working in sweatshop conditions can produce if they're suitably motivated. And to be fair, they do look pretty good, which is what I'd expect from a show that costs more than Brazil's national debt, and it proves that you really can polish a turd if you throw enough money at it. It also leans very heavily into the Lord of the Rings musical cues, because let's be honest, we need something to hook existing fans in. But really, the bulk of the trailer is just incomprehensible nothingness. Just lots of fleeting glimpses of characters and places with no context or meaning behind them, and you can practically feel how desperate Amazon are to show you exciting stuff without really showing you anything substantial. The best.
So I can't honestly agree with some of that because um besides unless you are like my level Lord of the Rings fan or higher, a lot of these things are gonna be big. Like they showed a flash of two trees. Does anybody in this chat know what the two trees even are in the Lord of the Rings? I would be given my community, I would be actually surprised if people knew where the two trees are and if anyone could name that dwarven city that they're in. Because like to me it's obvious, but to your regular people around the world, you can't hear what I'm saying? Oh. I don't know why I was so far away. So I'll say it again. So like does anybody here know what those two trees they flashed the screen were? Does anybody know the name of the dwarven city that they were in? And I'll take either name of the dwarven city that they say. Um so the trailer does not tell you anything. And I think that was a purpose. I think it was a whole thing. Um so yeah. I know you just said Neverwinter to be a memester, but yeah.
Best I can really pull out of this is that it's trying to present the four main factions at play in Middle-earth and their various outlooks on the world at large. The story is set during the Second Age of Middle-earth, during a time of relative peace after the defeat of Morgoth, who basically made Sauron look like a little bitch in comparison. Most of the elves now believe that
that's
all
true.
is right with the world again, but not badass Galadriel, who's
That's one of her whole things. She's a foresighty character.
now a sword swinging, orc killing, fist fighting, hard drinking, all conquering strong female character. Because
We have no proof of any of that except for we've seen her sword fighting. So we have no proof of anything that man just said.
I guess the idea of having a female protagonist that can't fight and kill and punch just as hard as a man is to modern Hollywood what facts, logic, and common sense are to a liberal arts professor. Then idiot McSquishyface.
So Galadriel does fight. So if you remember in the Hobbit films when they do that little fight at the end, she doesn't do that, but she does help dismantle the fortress of Dol Guldur, um, in the battle. Like she actually does have sequences written by Tolkien where she does commit to combat. Oh, again, bro, you're critiquing factual things about the Lord of the Rings when you have just no basis in it. and it makes me really upset when people do
Sorry, Elrond tells badass Galadriel that it's time to hang up her sword and stop being badass Galadriel because
because they just fought the devil. I can't. You would do that. You would be like, hey, we just fought Satan. Let's go. Let's like an actual time in history in which that happened. Okay? An actual time in history in which a great evil was defeated, and then somebody said, hey, we should go kick somebody else's ass. And it turned out to be right. Let's turn back the time to the real world called World War fucking II. When after the Hitler was defeated, Churchill said, hey, let's do Operation Unthinkable. What's Operation Unthinkable, you ask? Yeah, we're going to go invade the Soviet Union because Stalin's a dick. And everyone told him to fuck off. Turns out he was right. Stalin's a dick.
she's already defeated every enemy in the entire world because she's that damn good.
They never say in the trailer that she defeated them. They say that the enemy has been defeated.
But she's like, no way, I'm badass Galadriel. And he's
Nope.
like, I can be badass too. And
They
she's
don't.
like, I've seen more badass stuff than you have. Because it
Seen more
turns out that
horrible
Galadriel was at ground zero for 9/11, and now she's got a bad feeling that something even worse is on the horizon. Place your bets on which character ends up being proven right. The strong female character who can do no wrong, or idiot McSquishyface. Take that, patriarchy. There's also this gentleman who's apparently an elf too. Yeah, sure, okay. I'm pretty sure that Tolkien explicitly described elves as fair-skinned,
We already went over that. He didn't.
tall, slender, and possessing the kind of ageless, ethereal beauty that no man could possibly rival.
He
Which
did
is
do
what
that.
Peter Jackson did his best to replicate on screen in his own trilogy. But nah, who cares about sticking to things that were explicitly stated by the author of the book? Lore and world building are a bit like parole conditions, you see. Once you've breached them, there's no real incentive to hold back, so you might as well go all the way and enjoy it while it lasts. Then you've got the hobbits. Sorry, Harfoots, because I'm sure they won't be visually and functionally identical to hobbits in this show. Anyway,
The Harfoots are actually just a breed of hobbit. They're just like a offshoot.
they're represented mostly by Nori, a young woman that's curious to know more about the larger world while going against the nature of her people. There's
That is the actual motivation for Bilbo and the book versions of Sam and the book version of Pippin and the book version of fucking Mary. Like, what?
not a whole lot I can say about them at this stage, although it is weird to see Lenny Henry in a supposedly serious role like this. American audiences have probably
know who
never
Lenny
heard
is.
of him, but over here in the UK, he's well known as a stand-up comedian. I'm sure there's some kind of hidden meaning in that. You've also got the dwarves represented by this awesome piece of photoshopping, and last of all, the men of Numenor, represented by Queen Miriel.
I can't remember the name of the Queen of Numenor right now because the Silmarillion is definitely where my Lord of the Rings knowledge falls down the most. But she was a big and significant character, and considering that Tolkien described the men of the world, the men of Middle Earth, as going across all demographics and everything, like, duh.
Because, you know, of course they are. Despite the fact that leadership in Numenor could only ever pass to male heirs in the books, hence all the talk about the line of kings. But nah, whatever. We've got to meet that quota somehow, chaps. Remember, this is a totally made up fantasy world which also somehow has to reflect the world that we live in today.
So I'm gonna go on to that. Like, they kind of do. Like, if you let things just go about and exist as they are without any sorts of updates, especially in adaptations and things, the Lord of the Rings community will die. Like, it's already hard to get younger generations around 10 to 13 years old to really get into the Lord of the Rings and really appreciate what it is because it is a little dated. It is a little old time. And they updated the films in the early 2000s just a little bit, just enough to fit its day in order to bring it in for a new generation. And if you don't, you know, you don't do that, the fandom just dies with us and people will forget about the Lord of the Rings and it will be forgotten within one or two generations. So this man obviously doesn't care about preserving it.
Fucking hubris.
I'm also willing to bet that she's going to charge into battle with a mixed army composed of at least 50% female soldiers, because if women are known for anything, it's having the size, strength, and physical endurance needed for medieval sword combats.
I'm not gonna say it. He said it all. He said everything that needed to be said.
Oh yeah, and then there's this little line right here, snuck in at the ends.
The past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it.
Whatever could the showrunners be trying to tell us here?
So what they're referring to is they're trying to move on from the Morgoth era. They're trying to move on and forgive and forget all this stuff. It's a bunch of stuff that would be, like known to you if you bother to do any research before just bashing a thing you don't fucking understand. Now what? Now, granted, and now I'm gonna say this right now. This show could suck ass. It could be fucking horrendous. It could be poorly directed, poorly shot, poorly written. It could just be everything bad that people are afraid it could be. It could just be so unbelievable and so terrible that it could be true. But these arguments are utter crap.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Nah, it's a total mystery. Speaking of mysteries, what the fuck is this supposed to be? Did fucking Neo cartwheel his way onto set that day? You know, it always makes me laugh when directors are looking for some kind of memorable action scene, and their answer is basically, what would happen if gravity wasn't a thing anymore?
And that's and again, once the fucking end. That's how elves are supposed to fight. They're not supposed to fight like people. They're not people. They're not humans. They're not anything. They are basically mystical ethereal beings that have been around for thousands of years. Galadriel is older than the sun. I'll say it again. Galadriel is older than the sun and the moon. The woman watched them be made. And you think that she's gonna fight like I do? Like you do?
That being said, it does make for a banging techno remix.
Now I would actually watch that. This actually is cool.
Overall, assessing the contents of this trailer, it all adds up to the TV equivalent of a really big fireworks show. Something that's visually impressive and costs a lot of money, but doesn't seem to have a whole lot of substance behind it. And I can't shake the feeling that this show is going to have about as much in common with its source material as the new Resident Evil on Netflix. And don't worry, I'll be dealing.
And again, notice how he just shows black people. Notice how he just shows black people. Like, this actually is racist. I've seen other parts. I've seen other of his videos, and he doesn't go this far into his basically internalized racism. But it is that this video is chock full of racism.
And with that steaming pile of dog shit soon enough, believe that. But as far as the Rings of Power are concerned, this trailer basically proves that no amount of money can buy the one thing that Amazon so desperately wants: the loyalty of their fans. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now. You know some.
Whew. Kind of glad that's over. I'm gonna put that up on YouTube later.